The instant the words left my mouth, I knew I'd gone too far. Maybe I should just run off with Daniel, I said with a sly grin, flipping my hair like it was all just some harmless joke. James didn't move. He sat there, hand paused in the air as he reached for his coffee. Those familiar Hajel eyes, once soft and full of warmth, turned distant and stormy, like clouds building silently before a downpour. "You think that's funny?" he asked, voice calm but edged with something sharp. The smile dropped from my face. "James, it was just a joke. I didn't mean." He stood up. Slowly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor as he pushed it back. Then he turned and walked toward the door. No yelling. No dramatic exit. Just a quiet walk away, and somehow that made it even worse. I never saw him again after that. James and I were never perfect. We weren't even married, but we had a life together. Years of shared memories, driving aimlessly at night, our tiny first apartment, that scar on his chin from trying to fix a leaking pipe. He was always there. Dependable. Solid. Maybe that was the problem. I started to feel something inside me shifting. A kind of itch I couldn't name. Restlessness, maybe. Daniel, a coworker, wasn't anything remarkable. Tall, charming, a little too flirtatious. But he noticed me. Or at least, it felt like he did, more than James had lately. Or maybe I just needed to believe that. So, when I made that offhand comment, tossing Daniel's name out like a careless dare, I didn't realize it would be the spark that burned everything down. James didn't come home that night. Or the one after. His phone went straight to voicemail. His car was gone, but all his clothes were still neatly hanging in the closet. Like he'd vanished without a trace. At first, I convinced myself he was just cooling off. That he'd return once the sting of the words wore off. But then days passed. Weeks. And the silence grew heavier, like a stone I carried everywhere. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name written in his familiar, slightly slanted handwriting. My hands were shaking as I opened it. "You thought it was funny. Maybe to you, it was. But to me, it was a mirror showing a truth I didn't want to see. You don't respect me. You don't love me. You don't even notice me anymore. So I'm doing the only thing that makes sense. Don't try to find me. I'm gone." The words blurred through my tears. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't waiting for me to say sorry. He was truly, completely gone. I started seeing him everywhere, in every part of the life we used to share. At the grocery store, I'd grab his favorite cereal before remembering he wasn't there to eat it. At night, I'd reach for him in my sleep, only to find cold sheets beside me. People asked where he'd gone. I lied at first, said he was away on business. But the questions didn't stop, and the lies grew thinner, harder to maintain. Eventually, people stopped asking. They knew something had cracked. And he erased himself from the world. His social media disappeared. Emails bounced back. It was as if he'd never existed. The cruel irony. I never cheated. Never even kissed Daniel. I didn't want him, not really. That joke came from something darker. Something selfish. A way to provoke, to test James, to see how far I could push. I got my answer. Months later, I saw him again. I had tracked him down. A friend mentioned he was working at a repair shop 2 towns over. I drove there with my heart pounding, terrified and hopeful all at once. He looked different, leaner, sharper around the edges. His hair was a mess, and there was a tiredness in his eyes. But it was still him. He noticed me as soon as I stepped inside. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice flat. I had to explain, I said. It was just a joke. "A stupid one." He let out a bitter laugh. "Do you know how pathetic it feels to hear the person you love joke about running off with someone else?" I started crying. "James, no. It wasn't real. There was never anything between us. I swear." "But there could have been," he said, stepping closer. "And the fact that you dangled that in front of me, that told me everything I needed to know." My legs nearly gave out. "Please don't do this. Don't throw us away over one mistake. He looked at me for a long time. Then he shook his head slowly. It wasn't just that one moment. It was years of being invisible. That joke. That was just the last straw. Then he turned and walked away again, leaving me there in the middle of that dusty repair shop, sobbing like a child. After that, I stopped trying to find him. Not because I didn't care anymore, but because I finally understood. Some things can't be fixed. Time moved on, but the silence between us stayed frozen. A year later, divorce papers came in the mail. No conversation. Just a signature and a blank space waiting for mine. My hand trembled as I signed it. People think betrayal only happens in hotel rooms, in secret messages, in physical affairs. But sometimes betrayal is quieter. A thoughtless comment. A laugh at the wrong moment. A knife slipped into someone's back without even knowing you were holding one. I didn't cheat on James. But I betrayed him anyway. Not a day passes without me thinking about him. Wondering where he is. If he's found someone who makes him feel seen, appreciated. Sometimes at night, I whisper his name into the dark, hoping that somehow, across the distance, he might hear it. But deep down, I know he's gone. And it was my doing. All because of one reckless moment I thought was harmless. 2 years later, I saw him one last time. He was sitting outside a cafe across the street, laughing. Not the quiet, polite kind of laugh, but a real one. A woman sat across from him. I didn't recognize her, but the way she looked at him, it was the way I used to. His hand rested lightly on top of hers. He didn't notice me. Or maybe he did and chose not to. I stood there, frozen. My heart shattered all over again. Not because he'd moved on, but because he'd healed. And I never did.